Hey everyone, welcome to the Essential Credentials Podcast, episode 99. We are back on our Tuesday slot, and we're anticipating a wonderful episode full of discussion and debate. We're all probably going to get served by Alan tonight, but if not, at least we'll make it interesting for him. This is one of our first episodes where we've really just kind of stuck to a debate style of episodes, so we hope that you all enjoy that. Before we get into that, we've got the trio here. I'm joined by my best friend in Tennessee, Greg. How you doing?
What's going on? This is going to be exciting. Episode 99, one away from 100. The immaculate 100. I'm excited to dive into this episode. I can't believe we're so close to 100, you know? It's 2019 to today. So it's really just surreal. 100 episodes is approaching us fast. I got them all up on Buzzsprout.
Saw that.
So download it on iTunes, all your favorite podcast applications because they're available. Episode 1 through 98 is now available. I finally caught up after months and months and months. So I can now downgrade my payment plan because I was trying to get 12 hours a month, and now I can go down to 6 hours.
Nice.
So I'm excited to spend less money. But they're available and people are listening to them. It's really cool. I can look at the numbers. People are listening. So it's fun to know that they want to download it or listen to it live on iTunes or whatever podcast application.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate you getting those up there and giving people the chance to listen to it if they can't make it live or watch it on YouTube. So awesome. And then we've got Alan here today who is frothing at the mouth with some debates. So Alan, how are you feeling about this one?
I am feeling okay. I feel like these are some age-old debates that we're going to get back into. So I want to see if we can break some new ground. I'm also very careful when I talk to my friends. Want to protect their feelings because my feelings about things are so strong. You know, sometimes I could get a little bit sensitive about it. So I remember asking you guys off camera whether I should just let it loose, and you guys just like let it fly. Just be completely honest, and I'll be like, okay, no problem. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. Regarding the numbers, I think it was great that we had the reboot also around the 90s episodes, just for the 90s. I love that. For whatever reason, numbers have a relevance to my life. My major submission happened at PSA when in the 8 millions, and 8 is a very lucky number in Chinese culture. And so I have a great deal of pride, actually, that a lot of these of my favorite cards are with an actual cert of 8 million, even though it's just an arbitrary number really to think about. So yeah, just to crib off what Greg was saying about the importance of 100 coming up for us.
Yeah, well, and it's been great to see the numbers going up. We all three have seen some wonderful comments on the episodes that we've had a chance to respond to. We've seen a lot more views on all the episodes since we kind of refocused things. And it's been really nice to see that the passion for the 90s is still as strong as it was before we were really, diving deep into it when we first got started 99 episodes ago. I mean, I don't know if either of you have gone back and watched episode 1, but we might have to play a couple minutes of it on episode 100 and just have a bit of a laugh. So that's going to be fun. But before we dive into the episode, Alan, we've got a couple people that have jumped in to say hi so far.
Yeah, regulars. The familiar face, familiar handle, Ohio lawyer here with us. Good evening. Good to see you. Our buddy Alex, Significant Inserts, checking in. What's going on? Good to see you guys. While this episode happens, this is a debate that I think we've all had internally before and with friends. So if you have a take, if you have an angle that you want to bring up, please do, because I would like to hear what everyone thinks about how the 90s stack up to inserts, the 90s inserts stack up to ultramodern, and whether grading is all that.
Yeah, no, those are going to be two great topics to talk about. We've had some great discussions the three of us and with some of our other friends about, how does the 90s stack up with modern cards nowadays? I mean, a lot of would say it doesn't compare, and then the graded discussion. There's constant talk about that. We've got some news regarding that, obviously, that just came out with regards to cleaning and bathing cards. Never thought I would say such a thing, but here we are. Oh, nice. There we go. That's what's up. So I mean, here's the thing. We want to preface this. I think nobody in here thinks that there's a way anyone should collect. That is all individualized to who you are, right? So we're having this debate about what's better, ultra modern cards, 90s cards. I mean, there's great things to love about both, but if you had to pick a side, I mean, we're gonna try that out and see how it looks on an episode. And nobody is gonna have their feelings hurt here. I think there's some very valid points that all of us are gonna make. So I want to start with this question for both of you. Just right off the top of your head, Greg, when you think about a beautiful 90s card and a beautiful modern card, because if we were to kind of look at where all of us are at, I'm probably more swayed toward modern right now, right? I think I want to say about 90% of my pickups are modern compared to you, where it's like, what would you say, like 70-30, 90s to modern, something like that? And Alan's like all 90s. So like when you think of the two, like how do they stack up right off the top of your head? Like what's your first impression?
So we had a conversation about a week ago or so, and that really hit home for me. And the issue was, why do 90s cards have such an importance? Mm-hmm. And so the reasoning for me was that I collected cards in the 90s. So I set up at card shows with my best friend when I was 13, 14, 15. I had my friends' parents driving me to the card shops, and we used to buy packs and open them. We used to trade cards at each other's houses. So for me, these cards represent more than just a piece of cardboard. They represent nostalgia. They represent memories. They represent a concrete place and time where I was a child, where there was, bright futures. There was just the world at my fingertips, and there was Baseball Tonight. There was Sports Center. There was just a bigger than life home run extravaganza. And it just, the 90s cards are more than just a piece of cardboard for me. They are a lifetime, a generation, a moment. Like, there's so much more to me than just a piece of cardboard. And that's why those cards mean so much more to me, because if you give me a 2021 Optic box, I'll open it and it'll be fun, but it's not going to be the same. I'm not going to have that connection. I'm not going to have that instant transport back to, a memorable time in my life. But if you give me a Frank Thomas 95 hitting machines, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to feel something. I'm going to feel like an adrenaline rush. I'm going to feel an instant transport back to 1995 and remember what I was doing when I was opening these packs and what it felt like. So the cards mean so much more from that era than they do now. And what I'm understanding is that not everybody has that experience. Not everybody has that feeling. So I appreciate that, because you want to create that at some point. If you're not into cards in 95, then maybe you are in 2021. Mm-hmm. And maybe that is where you're creating those feelings. Maybe you have a child or, somebody, a friend, and you're opening cards together and suddenly you're creating these feelings. So I'm trying to appreciate that. But for me, all of this stems back from 1990s and those memories. And that's why that era is so important for me.
Yeah, I mean, Alan, I'll let you go next. I mean, if you want to kind of jump off that, I mean, too, with why your focus is all 90s right now? Like where is that coming from? I think it's great that you did that, Greg, because after Alan shares, then I can share about where we're coming from, and then we can kind of get into the debate a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, that covered the nostalgia aspect that I was going to talk about. It was a really eloquent way to talk about why these cards matter so much to people who are our age. I think that for modern, this era is going to matter to people who are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 17 years old right now. When they leave high school, leave college, and come back, they will have the nostalgia for this era. And those are the people that are going to keep the hobby going for the next generation. I just don't have the same type of feelings towards players now that we did when we were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. They were larger than life. They were almost godly to us. Now we've grown up. They're just people, just human beings, just like us. But, like if I were ever to run into Shohei Ohtani, for example, superstar, timeless player, I would be starstruck. Oh, cool. Like a great baseball player. I've never met somebody this famous before. But if I ran into Barry Bonds, I would be speechless. I would be scared to say anything. So
yeah, I'd be like trying.
The kid in me would well back up. So there's a natural advantage to the 90s era for people our age. But beyond that, we've talked about how the 90s innovated, how 1993 refractors came out, and how cards really haven't, other than with relics and autographs, they haven't changed that much. They're just kind of shiny, different types of shiny. There hasn't been a leap forward, something that we haven't seen like the way it happened in 1993. So that era was special, and it pioneered this idea of artificial rarity, right? They made it scarce on purpose. They printed it to be scarce. The idea being that it was a smaller pie, so they just needed more people to buy their cards. The market was much smaller, and they just needed to induce people to come in and continue to buy cards, and it worked. And there's an outgrowth of that. Now in modern, you have basically, I see modern as like 1998 tech. It's just a bunch of different patterns there, but there's no real rhyme or reason to it. Whereas in the 90s, it felt like, for the most part, the manufacturers really thought hard about the cards. They're so beautiful. Matt, back in your first 90s phase, we had a very similar podcast, and you said they're the most beautiful cards, they're the rarest cards, and in many ways, because they're so rare, they're the best way to not sort of erode value over time the way you have with modern. So those are the reasons why immediately I have the 90s over modern. That's also easy for me to say now on a 90s podcast with a 90s audience. So I want to be sure to have the other side represented by you. But before I throw it back to you, let me just welcome a couple more folks that have come in to say hello. We have Sig Inserts reminding us that it was a Tim Salmon preview, Greg, to get you back on track. That's what it costs. Right. Alex is the one who hooked Greg up with a couple of major Tim Salmon cards.
Forever grateful.
It exists.
We've got a comment here from 90 PMG. Is that Steven? Saying hello? Might be.
Saying hello.
What's going on? Kobe East Coast, friend of the show. Yeah. Some nice Frank Thomas cards coming up on 90s auctions. I actually didn't know that. Never actually bought a card from there. So we've got Brent Richards checking in. He agrees that the 90s rules. I mean, this is a 90s podcast, so it's not surprising that the crowd is partisan. And Junior also saying what's going on. It's good to see you guys.
Junior single-handedly keeping me in the A-Rod game, and I'll be able to explain that in a couple months. Anyway, I know that it's probably not the easiest thing to represent the other side of this argument when we're on a 90s podcast. And hey, I still love the 90s. Yeah, this just came in. This is exciting. So I'm showing this for a couple reasons. It just came in, but also if you look at the design philosophy with this kind of card, kind of a messy design, but for me, I love having great photography. Alan and I were just talking earlier how important photography / a good write-up is, like just having a card well-rounded, right? But for me, when I think back to what Greg was saying and that adrenaline rush that you get, Greg, I get an adrenaline rush from watching my favorite players perform at the highest level in professional sports. I know that most people probably don't like the Dodgers, but I like Tyler Glasnow, and I got to watch him with my girlfriend in this apartment dominate the Mets, and I loved every second of it. And he screamed and yelled and went off the mound, and it was a beautiful performance. Like, that gets me hyped so much that I watch the highlights again and again and again. And then going to collect his cards, well, he's not in the 90s, so I'm kind of, I'm such a visual person, a visual learner. I can go back and watch A-Rod highlights, and they get me excited. That's why I'm still here. I can go back and relive. I can watch the home run for my first game ever, right? I can relive the game that I went to and got A-Rod's autograph with my grandpa there. I mean, those are very big things for me. But when you think about a collector, it's what's impacting you the most. For you guys, it's nostalgia. For me, it's watching my favorite athletes that are still playing right now and having that to look forward to and they get excited about. So that is well represented in the cards that I collect. Marc-Andre Fleury, having him reach out to me, like, that is such a strong connection. Well, that makes it even more enjoyable to collect his cards, right? But I will say that a lot of my collecting is still geared toward 90s. So I'm always looking for, and I know Greg, who dabbles in modern, if you can find that cool card of a Larry Bird, right, or an A-Rod, right, but then Fleury, Glasnow, or Justin Jefferson that has that 90s vibe, then I'm all in. That's perfect for me. That's like my sweet spot right there. So I think that's why modern draws me in. I'm not saying I don't want to say that modern is better, but like, what's more fun to collect? I think that modern is more fun to collect because there's still designs that are coming out that are super exciting that are, you can look forward to and that have a little 90s vibe to them. So 90s aren't going to be made anymore. That's it. So for me, I think it's always kind of looking forward as opposed to looking back. So that's kind of where we're all at. And I love that it's all different. So go ahead, Greg.
I understand that, and when I remember in the 90s, when the Red Wings were going to the playoffs, it would be, playoff time, and it would inevitably be like, okay, it's time to watch the Red Wings. I would set up I was, 12, 13, 14, 15. I would set up all my signed pucks on the couches. I'd have my jersey on the couches. I'd have all my cards out so that they could be good luck for the Red Wings while they were playing.
Yep.
And have like every piece of memorabilia that I own of the Red Wings that was important to me in the living room while the game was going because I was going to get hyped and whatever happened, I was in. So I understand what you're saying, that the right now is very important because you have this thing, you're watching the player. It was the same thing for me in the 90s when Frank Thomas was around.
Right.
You're watching, the playoff race, the wild card, whatever it was, the home run derbies, whatever it was, Triple Crown, you were rooting for the player and you were either looking at a newspaper or you were looking at Baseball Tonight, Sports Center in the morning, whatever it was, but you were connected to right now.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think what is different is the personal connection to players and fans, because you had Ken Griffey Jr. baseball on Super Nintendo, Frank Thomas baseball on Super Nintendo. You had Ken Griffey Jr. commercials, and there wasn't, TikTok, and people were watching TV, and that was really your only source of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if Ken Griffey Jr. was on the TV, and you were going to have to watch TV because that was your entertainment. There was nothing else. So you were kind of force-fed, even if you didn't want it. You were force-fed these athletes, and I think that created, whether intended or not, that created a personal connection with all of those athletes. And now the question that I ultimately have is, was it so important? Was it more important because we were young and influential? Is that why that was so important to me? Or was it just a better time in baseball? That's what I struggle with. I'm old now, and so I follow the White Sox, but I'm not as big into the White Sox as I was in the 90s, and I'm trying to figure out why. And I don't know if it's because baseball was better in the 90s, or because me as a 13-year-old with, wide eyes for the future was more into baseball at that time. And that's what I struggle with trying to figure out.
My instinct is that baseball was just better in the 90s. I think it's both. I think we were younger. It was a different time. I still remember being a San Francisco Giants fan. There were very few games that were on TV. So every game that was on, it was like the Super Bowl. And if you were at school when it was a afternoon game, you were just bummed out. And I mean, all you could do was listen to like 100 games of your team on the radio. And the only way you could catch a look, if it wasn't on local TV, was to hop onto Headline News, that cable channel. At 28:58, they would have like a 30-second blurb of all the games that happened. So you check the scores in real time there, and you maybe see some highlights, maybe a glimpse of Will Clark getting a hit. I think the game was different. There's a lot of discussion about how different it was, how much more striking out there is and home run hitting there is now in today's game. So I'm far from an expert on today's game. I'm a little sheepish because of all four major North American sports, baseball is the one I would be least likely to watch. Like if I were in Vegas at a sports book, just watching games, the most random game, the first game I would watch is a hockey game. That's number one. And then a football game. And then I wouldn't, if it's not my team, I'm not watching basketball and I'm not watching baseball. So that makes a big difference, right? Not only were we younger, but just my connection to the game isn't what it used to be. And that's different for a lot of people, because here in the comments, we've got folks like Matt McNeil saying, the 90s won't be beat. Can't disagree. Cosmic Chrome, he says, was the best product he's seen in the last 10 years. And a lot of that stuff is because it recalls the excitement of the 90s, right? Like we talked about this before in a previous episode, where my favorite flurry cards of yours are ones that are inserts, stealth inserts, things that are printed that aren't necessarily numbered, that look like 90s cards. That's the type of thing that tickles me to no end. You've also got other opinions here. Ohio Lawyer coming in and saying that he likes modern cards, especially prospect cards, because he enjoys watching minor league games, following players through the system. It ties him to the games. And I totally understand that too, because when I was collecting hockey in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, I collected Datsuk, my favorite player on the Red Wings. I collected Iginla. I collected San Luis. And those were players that I really just enjoyed watching. Hockey is such a kinetic sport. You just get pumped up. You see them score a goal, you want to hop on eBay and see if you can get a card. Yeah. But I mean, even for me, like I didn't buy singles back in the day. So I was a player collector, but I only traded cards that I pulled from boxes myself. And to me, it felt like I was grinding out nostalgia, grinding out heart behind some of these cards rather than just going out and buying it. I really have to be into the player for me just to go out and buy a card of that player. Most 90s superstar baseball players would qualify. Didn't know that at the time. But for hockey, because I have no background in it, it was just the in-the-moment excitement. And I think that's the big vulnerability of collecting Modern 2 is how ephemeral it is, right? It's just, you might like a player, but they get hurt. Or you might like a player and they do something stupid and you get pissed. Or they may leave your favorite team. And so there's a lot of things that can happen. And it's just not like the rock that a team or a player that we grew up watching as a kid is going to be for my whole life. There's never going to be a situation where I'm not a Barry Bonds fan. I'm never going to not like my Barry Bonds cards. Whereas for hockey, like I would trade my St. Louis cards away now for a Bonds card if I could.
So I've got a good example. Tim Anderson was almost like MVP status for the Chicago White Sox. He was leading the league in batting average, and now he is like a sub 200 hitter for Florida.
Well, hey, he's 270. Okay, like I almost added him on my fantasy team. Let's not get crazy here. He was a stud 2 years ago.
Right, and I was in love with Tim Anderson, and I was like, okay, he's going to be the shortstop of the future. And now he doesn't exist in the White Sox, and whatever could have formed is now completely separated in my mind. So it's like that's not a risk for Robin Ventura. That's not a risk for Frank Thomas, Tim Raines, Ozzie Guillen. Like those are all people that are cemented in my mind, and they will always be there. Ray Durham, Jack McDowell. Those are guys that I'm not gonna suddenly move away from because they're safe. they're safe for me, you know.
I mean, the reason I've latched onto the players I have is because one of them is extremely safe, Justin Jefferson. The other one I have a deep personal connection to in Marc-Andre Fleury, and then with my dad and getting to connect with him. And third, Tyler Glasnow is probably one of the best pitchers in the game. And even when he was hurt and out for a year with Tommy John, like, okay, great time to get his cards, right? They're going to be cheaper. The rare ones are going to be cheaper. When you get a super fractor for $60, you know that you still care about the player a lot, right? And so, yeah, I got lucky that he went to the Dodgers and not the Yankees. That would have been soul crushing for sure. No offense, Yankees fans, but it would have been. So, yeah, there's always a risk, right? But then you're having to think about who you're choosing. And Duncan Robinson is such a cheap thing to collect. I like him. He's on my favorite team. That doesn't really matter. But when I'm looking at modern, I do take that into account. And I've taken a long time to like think about who I would like to watch. But, I mean, let me ask both of you guys this real quick. How many hours a week do you spend watching sports? Live sports.
Live sports? I mean, I don't watch any baseball at all. I watch the recap of my team only. Mm-hmm. If we make the playoffs, then I'll watch every game. I'm a bandwagon fan now. I hate to say it. Used to be the most dedicated Giants fan ever. Same with the Warriors. I'll catch a game from time to time, but I mean, I haven't watched a hockey game forever. So I would say in the past year, only Niners games.
Okay.
Basically, that's it.
Right, and that's easier because it's once a week. What about you, Greg? How many hours a week do you watch live sports? Because you guys are in a way different situation than me.
Yeah.
So
0. It's easily 0.
Okay, so with taking that into account, I'm still in a position where I could say Tyler Glasnow is pitching tonight. Like after I get off work, I'm going to ride my bike home. I'm going to get food. I'm going to get everything ready, and I'm excited to watch this guy play just like I used to in the 90s of a Mariners game, just like Alan talked about. You get home, a Giants game is on, right? So that's what I'm talking about. That's why for me, modern still resonates because I'm so pumped to watch these guys. Like, you know, when Fleury's starting, I'm more nervous now for him than anything else, but that's exciting. You stop everything and you put the game on and you watch until he gets scored on 3 times because his defense is terrible. Then you turn the game off. But still, I still have that excitement that you guys are talking about that you had back in the 90s. It still exists for me in the same way because it can. I don't have 3 Matt Juniors and a wife yet. So it's like I have the ability to be vested in these guys that are playing now. That's why I think modern is more exciting for now. Maybe that'll change in the future when I have less time to dedicate to my favorite players. But when the Vikings are playing, man, I get pumped. Like my once a week on Sunday, it's like, let's go. Let's support. And every time Jefferson does something awesome in a game, it's like you're extra hyped because you have his cards. So I'm just speaking the way you guys did about the 90s. It's the same thing.
Well, so 2020, you know, I always end up with, I don't get it right off, but I always end up with the White Sox single season subscription to MLB TV. Mm-hmm. And so 2020, I remember, I don't know, I used to get the whole package, you know, from way back when, 2010, and every year I'd get the whole package. But then I switched to the White Sox around 2014, and I would just get the White Sox. And so around 2020, I started keeping score. So, you know, I used to work a different shift. And so at work, if a White Sox game was going, I would keep score of the game. Yeah. And so to me, that is the most involved you can possibly get in a game, keeping score. Yeah. And, you know, when I could at work and it was slow, I would keep score, pause it, go back to work is slow again, press play, start scoring it. And then I'd watch a game in, 4 or 5 hours, whatever it took to finish it up. But that, to me, is the most invested you can possibly be in a game because you are actually having to do homework. And I will say this, even having that, it did boost my enthusiasm. Like I was super into Larry Garcia. And I got his superfractor, and that's why I got it, because I was really into the White Sox games, but it still didn't elevate me to that level of how I feel about 90s cards. It was more of I like this utility player, and I have just a strong like for him, and I want a cool card of him. But I
Right.
wasn't out there like, oh, now I'm going to get Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert and Kobe Mock. I'm not going to get all these guys because I'm scoring the game. It was still it's fun to watch. It's fun to do, but I prefer 90s cards, even with that level of enthusiasm and intensity of watching and keeping score. So I just want to make sure that, you're saying you have time to watch the games. Well, when I did have time and I was keeping score, I still didn't feel that. From 2020, 21, 22, and 23, I still didn't feel it.
Well, you have to be latched into one player rather than maybe a team, right? Like it's way easier to get latched onto one guy, especially a guy who pitches every fifth game, right? So you can get all this excitement built into one guy pitching every 5 games, and it just continues to build and build, especially when you see how dominant and filthy this guy is against the best players in the sport. I mean, it's just so easy for me. So I think it's a mentality thing for sure. I mean, even, Evangeline has commented like, man, you get really like excited when they do well, and when they do bad, you have to work on like not being bummed out, because when they suck, that's when you're just like, oh man, like it can almost like ruin your evening at times. So I think there's some downsides to it as well. Anyway, I just wanted to add that, Alan.
Well, one more thing I would add. I don't know how much longer we're going to be on this topic for, but it is fascinating because it looks like a lot of folks who are commenting collect all kinds of cards. You had Junior saying that he also does collect modern as well. That fortunately, 90s modern 90s is made by Panini, and they don't have the licensing, so it's a killer. So I guess the cool cards, the cards that are innovative, coming out of Panini. I guess I don't know about the modern market at all. But he still collects Trout, Soto, Judge, stuff like that. I mean, I understand it, but I think that modern, by and large, Matt, you're kind of an odd bird, right? Because modern, by and large, is supported by gambling. It's supported by repacks and group breaks and hitting the lottery ticket, and that is what you see at card shows with kids going around with the big cards. That is 99% of modern. And then you have some weird people who actually do like a player and watch their player. People like you, people like Ohio Lawyer, who have players that they have cards of back when they were young, back when they were prospects, and you can see them grow. I totally understand that. When I got young guns of players in hockey, you're just more invested. You want to see what line they're skating on. You want to see if they're more likely, if they're playing as a center, if they're playing as a wing, what kind of goals they're going to. You follow day to day. So there is that to it. But I think the part that maybe, I mean, I don't think I would like modern in any case. There's nothing that convinced me. When you first asked me if, I could be persuaded to modern, I said it was akin to trying to persuade me to collect Barbie cards. There's like literally nothing about modern baseball for me that I would find appealing. A little bit disingenuous for me to say there's all these other problems that I have with it, because that's when it boils down to it. What Greg was saying, it was right. Like whether I watch it or not, I'm just not going to have the same connection that I have to Kenny Lofton, JT Snow, Jeff Kent. It's just never going to happen. That was just a special part of my life, and there will never be a player, no matter if the Giants win 10 World Series in a row. We did win 3 in 5 years, and none of those players, not even Bumgarner, are on the level of a Jeff Kent to me. So that sort of just tells you why I wouldn't be able to leave the 90s even if I wanted to.
Well, I guess the last point I'll say here before we kind of run off this, and you guys can add to it, is I've always been somebody who likes having something to look forward to. And I know a lot of modern people probably like to look forward to the gambling, like you were talking about. Ooh, what's the next group break? I can try to get my money back 10 times. I think for me, I always like seeing the innovation that is going to come out of either Panini or Upper Deck, whether it's the case hits for Jefferson or the designs for a Fleury card. I mean, like when you see something like this, you think of Flair probably, right? Kind of Flair-esque, right? I mean, this is a rare jersey numbered card of him, and this is as nice as you can find. I love this kind of stuff of Marc-Andre. And then you got stuff like this. You look forward to game-used pieces that are super unique. And this is from the neckline of his jersey. And there's stuff like that they're still putting out that is super, super fun. And I always have that to look forward to with the 90s. When's the next time a Quantum Leap A-Rod's going to show up, right? Like, oh, what a great design. What a nostalgic set. So amazing. It might take me years to ever get one again. But if I can look forward to getting a Marc-Andre Fleury game used like gold pad from Minnesota, a couple months, 3-4 months, and I'm going to feel just as strong about that. So that's where I'm at. I like having things to look forward to. In the 90s, when's the next time you're going to see something pop up, right? There's guys that have been chasing electric diamond golds for like 10 years of some random player. It's just like that's the only card they have left to get. So what else do they have to look forward to? I guess that's my last little bit of this argument is the 90s can be so unpredictable, and I like having that consistency.
It reminds me a little bit about what Milan was saying last episode, about how whether you're sort of in it for the endorphins rush or whether the endorphins comes from having the chase, not being able to find the card, and finally being able to find it. And I think it's just like you said, maybe a different personality type where I do need the little bumps, because even though I'm in hibernation right now, I still opened like 15 packets a couple weeks ago. They just built up over time. This is like one of my most dormant times in the hobby since I've come back in 2018. And even still, I do want those little drips of endorphins of winning something on eBay, winning something on ComC. That's there. But the 90s is so vast. I'll collect an entire lifetime of one player in one era and still never have everything. That's how vast it is. And it's unthinkable now. My favorite player is Mookie Betts, but he's probably got 20 times as many cards out there as Barry Bonds does. Like I wouldn't even know where to begin. Like what's even a rookie card in Modern? It's so confusing to me, and I just was never motivated to go and figure it out.
Right.
So yeah, I think you work around that. You were saying waiting for how many quantum leaps are going to pop up, and the workaround is I collect Barry Sanders, Frank Thomas, Tim Salmon, Larry Bird. I'm constantly rotating when things are stagnant, and I think when that Tim Salmon Golden Anniversary refractor pops up and I finally can land it, then it's going to be that extreme euphoria I'm going to experience, because that was a card that just has eluded me, and it's been like a nail, in my paw for the whole time, because it's a card that I just can't find. So when it does pop up, and if I do land it, then it's going to just be an outstanding feeling. But until then, you do the rotation of Frank Thomas, Barry Sanders, Larry Bird, and those are not lesser to me, because that's what I'm in the mood for at the time. And so I'm able to get the cards that I want of something, different, of that same generation. But I understand where you're coming from and saying like you have a very limited amount of 90s, and once you have them, then you're starting to have strong competition, strong prices. But you have to kind of figure out, like for Alan, he's got some extreme patience and dedication towards his player, but also his player requires him to have that kind of financial dedication, because if he spends $400 on a Greg Maddux or an A-Rod, well, that's $400 that he takes away from Barry Bonds.
Yeah,
he needs that $400 because that's what Barry Bonds necessitates. Now, the same might happen for Barry Sanders or Frank Thomas, but it doesn't happen for Tim Salmon. So it's just one of those things of trying to navigate your collection and not work yourself out of a collection by waiting for cards, because I understand wanting to have something in the mail. I understand that feeling of wanting to have a good mail day or something to open or something to look forward to. I get that.
Yeah.
Which is why I do that cycle. But I just want to say that everybody's got a workaround to that, and that may be staying in the 90s. I know some guys do get 90s cards that, they're insert collectors or set collectors or whatever it is. They're still within the 90s, but they're not staying stagnant. Because I understand that thought process on being stagnant.
Well, yeah, and just to add to Alan's point, Alan, you said you've been in hibernation, which, opening 15 packages doesn't sound like hibernation, but compared to where you started, I am like petrified of having to be stuck in hibernation. Like in a way, you have to balance it out with life. I get that, right? I'm totally on board. But the thought of like being in hibernation because no air odds have popped up in 2 months, that sounds boring as heck. Because now I'm just scrolling through eBay, waiting for the one card to, yay, I finally got something. You know, I think that's the whole looking forward to something. How do you balance that out? So we all kind of drop in the line of like what our personality brings. And Alan's the most patient person. Greg is pretty patient, and I am not that patient. So I think we're collecting the way that works. And modern allows for me to, be a little bit more constant. But this was a fun chat. I think this one could go on for an entire episode. But I think we should probably, speaking of modern and grading, I think we should jump into the next part here. And Alan, you had a great comment the other day. He goes, Matt, I don't really like this idea as much, but I loved when you got on the show and said grading shouldn't exist. I think I said it on the show or in a chat. I'm going to stick to that, man. I can't stand it. I can't stand the drama behind it. I can't stand that everybody chases a 10. I would love to go back to the 90s as far as like the way we approach collecting. And it was like, what is a PMG worth right there? Not what is it worth graded. What is it worth? What is it worth? And that's it. So I'm going to just stay that, and you guys can just take off with from here.
I have a little bit to say about grading, probably. Let me just go over some of the comments. It's been really live in the comment section today. I think people like talking about why they collect what they collect. I think it's great. I'm learning a lot about the folks in the comment section. Hi Lawyer says, I just taught my daughter to enjoy the game. She sits next to me and keeps the scorebook for all the Reds games. That is hardcore. I had a St. Louis Cardinals friend who, when we went to games together, he would keep a scorebook. That is a real baseball fan right there. That's hardcore. And when somebody has that much passion, you're by them, it definitely rubs off on you. We got Rage 508 coming in and saying, what's up? You got Matt McNeil saying he still watches or listens to every Astros game the way I used to do when I was 9 years old. That's crazy. Since the 80s.
He's a big modern collector too. He also collects a lot of modern baseball.
I feel like I might be the only person who wouldn't touch modern with a 10-foot pole, but he says that 90s and early 2000s, just like for me, are the honey hole of the PC, but he does have modern as well of his home teams. You've got Tri-City Taper saying, as someone who collects 90s as well as modern, this is everybody, it feels like, exclusively Miguel Cabrera. I can say my favorite part of modern cards are the throwback cards, Heritage, Archives, etc. So, and then Joshua Scampo. Oh, all right, we've moved into the new topic of grading. So,
Shouldn't exist.
I think maybe you misquoted me a little bit when you said, I wish that grading were illegal for all cards that came out after 1989. That was
my exact comment. You're right. Thank you for that.
I'm on board with that, just because I have a lot of fondness for grading. There's a lot of good things that I can say about grading, but if I could be God of the world and just do away with it with a snap of my finger, there's so many other negative things that have flowed out of grading that I would rather not have it at all than to have the benefits of grading with all that stuff. But that's not reality. And in reality, there are a lot of benefits to grading. But I do want to hear what Greg has to say first before I weigh in.
Yeah. So, you were just talking about it. And so if you want to obtain a 10 and your card has a slight ding on the edge, but you're really good with trimming, well, now what are you gonna? Now you got the little devil on your shoulder, right? Because you're saying, okay, I could turn this into a 10, and people want a 10. So that's where grading comes into play. It causes you to think about those things. Those ideas pop in your head. What do you got there?
I just wanted, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to show something as you were talking. This is a 10. You're talking about this card here, which I have a lot of pride for because I submitted it myself and got a 10. But yeah, go ahead. The pull of the 10 is very powerful right now for a lot of reasons.
Right. And so the 10 is starting to be this tempting thought. Like, okay, I could create a 10, right? I could make this card a 10, and that is a thought that has creeped into people's heads. And so it's really a bad thing to me because I grew up in the 90s where grading wasn't a thing and people weren't really trying to trim. They weren't trying to fix a car. They were, cleaning cars. I'm sure it happened, but that it wasn't really, it was an afterthought, really. It was something that just, you had what you had and that was it. And now people are, how can I make my car better? How can I fix it? How can I turn this into more money? And the way you make it more money is by grading it. You grade it and it's a 10, and your $100 card is now a $10,000 card, and you might be able to create it, you might screw it up, but is it worth it? And now people are weighing their options. Is it worth fixing my card? And that's what grading has caused. I get wanting to encapsulate, and I think as collectors, most of us have some level of OCD, because as a collector, you want to keep your things nice. You want to organize them. You want to be able to look at them. Like, there's not a lot of collectors that just have cards on the floor everywhere and they don't care about them. They're like, you got your good cards, you got your bad cards, you got your cards you want to sell. Like, usually you have some type of system. Mm-hmm. And a system means that there's some level of OCD. And so I get wanting to encapsulate them, and I get wanting to make them all uniform. You want all your cards in top loaders. You want all your cards in one touches. You want all your cards in PSA, BGS, SG. You want it the same. So I get wanting to encapsulate. I get wanting to secure them. But I think also the grading aspect has caused people to succumb to the dark side.
That's right.
More for the right reasons. Like, Alan, can I ask you a question about that card you just showed there? I mean, a true question. Please be brutally honest.
Yeah.
Would you love that card less if it was like not graded in raw? Would you love it less?
I love it more that it's a 10 for sure. So there's the aspect of it. This is one of my proudest cards because it's impossible to get 10s. I don't expect a 10. I don't want a 10. I don't need a 10. I'm not selling it, so it doesn't really matter. But maybe it's because I like getting good grades in school or something. I don't know. I just like the fact that this got a 10. And the fact that some random dude who I'll never meet, who may not know more about cards, probably doesn't, than any of my friends who collect cards, gave it a 10 on that given Tuesday. Maybe he had a good day or whatever. Even knowing all that, I do get a rush from seeing that somebody else thinks that my card is a 10 out of 10 besides just me. I like that. So in addition to all the things you were saying about encapsulation, I agree with what Greg was saying about how, we are all OCD in a way, and we just want our cards kind of look the same.
Right.
I could see why this sort of thing is an eyesore for a lot of collectors, especially in the 90s, because sometimes you just want to see the card. You don't want to see all this, what are all these numbers and these letters up here doing, like it doesn't add to the beauty of the card. So I could totally see that. But I mean, just to add on to what Greg was saying, all of which I agree with, when we first saw those big money cards of like Strasbourg, or I can't remember who the big cards were that sort of crossed over into the mainstream, but they were all in slabs. And so you're like, oh, the really, really, really expensive cards, the important cards, the Honus Wagner, they're in graded slabs. So you sort of psychologically also associate quality with this. And I think that's also part of it. And that's why I said there's a lot of reasons I like grading. I like the substantialness of a slab. There's lots of reasons, but they don't outweigh what Greg is saying. Now that the industry has gotten a lot more expensive, I think if you sort of look within yourself and think about what you would do if money was on the line and not these keepsakes that matter to you, you would be tempted to do something to your card, even if it was just to push down a corner, if it would mean the difference between $100 and $10,000 for a card you don't care about. But the problem is for the person who gets that card ultimately, the collectors, we don't want you to touch any part of the card. We don't want anything. We would rather have a nicked corner 100 times out of 100 than to have anybody so much as mess with the card in the slightest. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where it's easy for us to say, because for us, we're collectors. We don't really, move and shake in that way. But for somebody who makes a living doing that, or whose primary enjoyment comes from it, it's not okay. But you could see why with the money difference, that would be the case. And that's why I said if I had my way, we wouldn't have grading for past a certain date, just because, especially for the 90s, we talked about how rare it is anyway. It doesn't actually matter. But it does, because when you show your friend a cooler card, it feels good to show them that you have the cooler card. You have the Don Mattingly in the 1987 Topps. That's the best card you could get. I like your Will Clark, but the Don Mattingly is better, or I like your 9, but my 10 is better. So there's that aspect of it too. And I admit that that's part of what goes through my mind when I think about grading.
So you're saying that it does make you feel better to say, well, hey, I like your Barry Bonds the Man refractor, but I have the 10 of it. Like, is there that level of competitiveness within grading still that exists? Do you guys believe that? Because for me, I like the equal playing field, right? And that's where I think if you were to remove grading, you're looking at trying to learn the market. Well, then I can see what a Tim Salmon out of 50 is going for from a certain set, or the Man refractor of A-Rod or Bonds. Like, it's going to be consistent, right? And you add this 10 to it. And now, if you have a chase card, like, oh man, I want that A-Rod Quantum Leap, and the only one I have to find is a 10. Now I don't want it. I think that sucks. I mean, but somebody else, they're going to be like, no, that's a 10, dude. Like, that makes it even better. I don't think so. I could care less. Yeah.
I'm of two minds on it, right? I mean, right now, greening is a major topic in the hobby, and this card is greening up near the face. Topps had an issue with its refractors from 1993 all the way through 1998. This is the last year they had the greening problem. And so there's a movement now to take greening into account. And so nowadays, I don't think this card would get a 10. But the fact that it isn't a 10, I would love to find a raw card unpeeled of this sometime and sell this. Because, yes, I do like a 10, but I don't like it more than the money that this would bring, right? I would rather have the raw card, and if the card god said I could never grade it, I'd be fine with it, and then sell this because this has a 10 on it. So I don't like it that much. I like it more, but I don't like it 30 times more. So there's a big difference there. And there's one more comment here from Rage. There's so many comments today that I can't keep up with it. But one of the comments on grades was by Rage 508, saying one thing for sure: upcharges on grades is the biggest scam going. I submitted this card at like the worst possible time as we were coming down off the highs of the COVID spike, and I think they charged me like $400 or something, $500 just to grade this card. And I'm not really sure why, because there was not a sale of this card anywhere in the past like 20 years leading up to when this card was graded. So I don't know about a scam, but I was pretty freaking pissed about it. And I agree that there is something wrong when the incentive structures are the way that they are. And I know that people have been getting on the cleaners a lot, and sort of some of them are applauding the grading company's PSA for banning Kurt's cards, and I could totally see why. But on the other hand, they're kind of like, they're the main reason that people even bother to do this, because nobody who collects cards would mess with a card that severely if they were just going to keep it for themselves, I think.
Greg, you like 10s, right? I know you collect some 10s of like different base cards that you like to find. What's your motivation behind that? Like, why do that instead of just having a copy of the card that you think looks the nicest?
So that thanks for asking that. That's a good question. Yeah. I collect Tim Salmon, and like this, for instance, is one of my favorite cards. It's the Fleer Tiffany. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite pictures, one of my favorite cards. I know my camera is not going to pick up there a little bit right there. But it's legitimately a $5 card, and it's hard. It's one of those things, like, I want to have a reason to show it off. I want to have a reason that it's special, other than I don't feel like people believe me in terms of just me loving the card for it being a cool picture, right? So it's like, what else can I do to make this card special? And what else can I do for people to be like, wow, that is amazing? Well, I could find a 10 for $70 or $50 or whatever, and it can be a pop 1 or I don't, what pop 3, whatever it is, and suddenly it's an SSP of this card of this SP, and it's now like in that same ring ball game arena as some of the heavy hitters, because I got, Alan was showing the finest, the man refractor pop, it's a PSA 10, it's a pop whatever.
Probably one, yeah.
Yeah, whatever it is. But now I can say I have this Tiffany that's a PSA 10. And so, yeah, it's kind of jumping on the bandwagon, but it's because I have a love for these base cards that nobody cares about. And if I turn them into a 10, then they become kind of relevant. And so it is kind of succumbing to peer pressure. I think just I don't want to spend $500 on a PSA 10 when it's a $10 card. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spend $5,000 when it's a $1,000 card, but I am willing to spend $65. And it's really cool to just have that SSP feeling of a card that I truly appreciate, but I feel like is just kind of on the back burner. And that's why I'm into some of the PSA 10s that are base cards, lower end inserts, nothing crazy. I don't really want anything more than $100 in a PSA 10. If that's not necessitated, if like a Bowman Golden Anniversary Refractor PSA 10 pops up, then I have to make an internal decision. Am I going to spend more on this card because it's a PSA 10? That's a different scenario for me. So you have to think there's only 5.
And that's the thing. Why is it even graded? It's out of 5. It shouldn't be graded. Who freaking cares?
And the PSA 10 demands more money. So now you're in this boat of like, okay, am I ever going to find 4? So should I buy a 10 or not? Am I going to spend money because I may never see a card again? And that's a bad place to be, because you're paying for the grade at that point. You're not paying for the card. And I hate that. That's a dirty feeling to me, to buy the grade and not the card. But when it's numbered out to 5, you're stuck. You're really stuck, because you may not see a Golden Anniversary Refractor again. You may not. And that's just my thought process on it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alan.
Just to speak in defense of grading, you guys know that I'm a condition hawk. So insofar as grading can help you discern whether a card is in better or worse condition, that has intrinsic value to me. That has core collector value to me. The problem is that there's such a wide variance in what grades you can get. And now we have 1 out of every 20 cards getting trimmed or messed with or something. This card here is a great example of what Greg is talking about. I've never seen like a super clean copy of the Awesome Powers Onyx Bonds. And so when this popped up in the buy sell trade group, a PSA 10, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, Matt, you got to get this. Matt was like, what am I going to do with the PSA 10? And it was a total difference in philosophy. But for me to be able to get a really fine example of a pretty common insert that's beautiful, one of my favorite inserts, lower end inserts, was a big deal to me. It's very satisfying. And I think part of it is what Greg was saying. It feels a little dirty. But on the other hand, there are reasons why grading helps, right? It helps for people who are trying to assess the condition of a card when you can't see it in person. And for people who came from a tradition of collecting cards from the 80s and earlier, since they printed 1 million copies of every card, what are you going to do to sort of stratify between, the rabble, and the good stuff? And so, yes, I find myself buying 1989 Donruss base in a PSA 10, and I get a lot of, and they're in the same area as cards that are worth 5 figures for me, because they're both some of my favorite cards, and it does have to do with grades. So I don't know. Go ahead.
So that brings me to a point that we ended up in the 90s, and I don't know if you guys remember, but it happened with baseball cards just as it did with comics. Everybody bought The Death of Superman, and everybody was like, I'm gonna be able to retire off of this comic book because it is the death of Superman. So my mom bought 3, and my mom doesn't do anything with anything. She bought 3 comics. And so with the 90s, we all put our Tom Glavines and our Greg Maddoxes and, you know, Deion Sanders. We all put them in top loaders and penny sleeves. You know, name your prospect, Ben Grieve. We all put them in top. We all put them in top loaders, and we're like, we're going to retire on this. And so we kept them in good condition, and that was the junk wax, right? That became the junk wax era. Mm-hmm. And everybody had amazing 1990 Donruss and immaculate 91 tops and just pristine cars. Well, okay, that's, you know, we ended up with junk wax, and the baseball cards seemed to just fall off the radar and lost all their value. Well, now everybody is grading as soon as they come out of the packs. And you're talking about PSA 10s in the hundreds for certain cards. What does that do to the value if 500 people have a PSA 10? What is a PSA 10? Like, how is that important? Because I get if you're Alex Rodriguez, Quantum Leap is a 10, but I don't understand if your Ohtani Tops is a 10 along with 1,000 others, you know? And so the value of that becomes almost irrelevant to me. Like, you've lost the edge because there's just everything is great. Like if every card is graded, what is that? You know, it becomes the death of Superman, I guess.
Well, and it's just like, though, like, Alan, can you put up Junior's comment about the A-Rod PSA 10s? Because I want to throw something out. Okay, let's say you have a PSA 10 Pop 1, but it's a card out of 10, like from Encore or something. Like, why does that even matter? Does Greg and we three have talked about the whole pop thing? Like, that is such a – does it really matter, right? Like, does it matter if there's 1,000 of them? Does it matter if there's one of them? If it's like, what if you grade a superfractor? Well, that's a Pop one, right? Like, of course. So I get there's so many different ways to look at it. I do like Alan's take of like preservation. I think that's the one thing I will say that I could jump on board. I've got all these amazing Fleury cards. Well, yeah, someday I'm not going to be here, and somebody's either going to enjoy them, sell them, or whatever. So if they're going to be sold someday, then grading is the way to go. I get that. But, you know, it's there. You go. There it is. Like, Alan, that's an 8. Is it only preservation at this point for that card, or do you actually care that it's an 8 and not a 7?
Well, both, right? So I put this up. I did not mean to cut you. I keep trying to put this. You guys don't have to expand it. I'm just putting it up as an example of a card for preservation. This is deckled edge. It's all scratched up in the front. You know what I mean? Like, this thing is like peeling in the back. It's like I need it to be in a soft sleeve. And so part of the reason I put a lot of my best cards in PSA holders was because I had the mistaken impression that they started a new technology where every card comes with a soft sleeve inside. Without that, I actually believe that it's akin to putting your card in a top loader without a penny sleeve. Over time, you're just going to scrape the hell out of it. And it's actually going to lower the condition of your card over time. But a card like this is floating in 2 soft pieces of plastic within this case. And that is the primary reason I got this encased. There's a lot of cards where for OCD people, like Greg was talking about, a card like this, that's not a standard size card. Where would you even put this? You'd have to get a special top loader. You couldn't even find it in a stack of top loaders. There's a lot of reasons to get things graded and slabbed. And then the final thing I'll say is, you know, funny enough, yeah, I do like the fact that this got an 8 over a 7. I think it's probably a 7, but it got an 8. And now I'm like, oh, cool, this card is now a mint card because somebody thought so. But if I were grading it, I would have given it a 7. It goes both ways.
Yeah, I actually, the reason I was looking down is I was texting my buddy Mitch, who I've done some hockey, podcasts with. He's cracked 101s out of slabs, and people are like, "What are you doing? That's so stupid. Why do it?" Kind of like out of 2, right? He goes, well, he basically said that the grades mean nothing when you're talking about rarity, and when you're talking about storage. Greg and I have the one touch / top loader thing going on with our storage. It unifies our storage. That's why I completely avoid graded if I can. So I don't know. I find very little appeal to the idea of grading other than maybe protecting an investment. That's the only thing I can say. I could care less if an A-Rod Quantum Leap comes in a 10. Part of me would want to crack it out of there, but because it's worth so much more, like Greg, if he gets a golden anniversary in a 9 or a 10, like you're not cracking it out. You're just not. Sorry. But if it was an 8, I bet you'd crack it out. You know what I'm saying? Because then the value kind of is right. So I hate that it makes me have to choose. You know, like when you look at that card, Alan, if that was A-Rod, I'd crack it. I don't care what anybody says.
But
under no circumstances. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah.
The PSA cases frustrate me because I guarantee if you give me a PSA 10 Otani Tops, I can rattle it till it gets a 7.
Yep.
And it frustrates me because the way that you're storing the card, yeah, it was a 10 when you graded it, but if I can rattle a card, then that means it's probably not going to stay a 10 forever. Honestly, it needs to be in a BGS case with a penny sleeve to preserve it as best it can. Because if I can rattle a card, then I can probably shake it to the point where it is now a 7. If I could hold that card every day and shake it for an hour and turn it into a 7.
Mm-hmm.
Means it's not a 10 anymore. So how can you grade a card and put it in this non-concrete situation and call it a 10? Right. Beckett is really the only way that I feel like you can say it's a 10 and it can stay a 10 because it's got this sleeve. You know, Alan's got a few PSAs that he's forced them to put in a penny sleeve. But that's the only way to keep a card in a condition is to have that kind of protection. And that's really what bothers me about PSAs. I've got about 70 or 80 PSA cards, but I hear them rattle.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if I hear it rattle and I send it off to somebody and it's like, oh, it's a PSA 10. Well, no, it's probably not anymore. It's probably a PSA 9 because we've let it rattle around the mail so much. But
well, they'll get tagged too, right? I got a plug for tag. I mean, I think the cases look amazing, and those cards are, you know, we don't know long term if it's going to do anything to them, but you know, the tag slabs do hold them pretty darn secure in there. But just want to throw that out there. I agree.
In 2018, when you guys saw this card out there, 2019 at the National, I was in line waiting for hours to get some of my best cards, including this one, reslabbed with a penny sleeve inside. You can see the bowing, the soft plastic within it. It's a total eyesore. But would I ever crack this out and have them put it in a regular one, the way most people like it? I would not, because of what Greg is talking about. Preservation is exceedingly important to me. This is now encased in soft plastic, and so it'll never come out that way. It's just going to stay in here, and I'm going to sacrifice looks for preservation. And Greg did ask me whether I would want to put my entire collection now in BGS, now that I've realized that most of these PSA cases don't have the soft sleeve inside. And I'd have to think about it, because I've actually done what Greg has said before. I've taken a card that was graded and I've rattled it around for a couple seconds, and you can ding it up immediately. You can see, you don't even need a couple of months. You can do it in a couple of seconds, and you can see the difference. That's how I know that over time it's going to degrade your card. Some people don't care about that. For people who don't care about the condition of your card, you know, and you get more pride out of the grade that it has on there, or the price bump that you get from the grade, then I guess it doesn't matter. But for somebody like me, where condition is actually more important than all of that, more important than any of this, it makes a huge difference to me. And then I'm torn, because there's no way I would ever crack this out. And I want to hit on this last point that you brought up, Matt, which is the value of the card you're talking about impacts whether you're going to grade it, right? So I don't know how you feel, Greg, about your highest end Barry Sanders and highest end Frank Thomas's, which are a lot more valuable than your highest end Tim Salmons. But when a card is worth 5-6 figures, there's something to be said for having a third party bless it as being as badass as the market already knows it is. And there's much less risk. At least the market sees this card as less risk if I keep it in a PSA 8. And a PSA 8 for a 90s card like this is a huge grade. This is a bump. It's like, I don't know what the pop is, but it's a very low pop. And there's only 25 of these, so it would have to be. But even within the 25, like, there are not going to be that many that are 8, 9s, and 10s, I guess.
Right.
So that's the idea.
Well,
You asked me, you said you don't know how it is for me. Well, the main thing that I'm unfortunately at now is if I were to sell, I don't want people to question the authenticity. That's where my mind's at now.
right.
If I'm going to sell a card, are people going to question its authenticity? And that's that's a horrible place to be at in your collection, where you're like, okay, if I ever want to sell these, I probably need to grade them because people might not think they're authentic, or they're trimmed, or they're altered, or whatever it is. And that's really a frustrating place because I've spent a lot of time amassing this collection, but I'm not a 100% grading trimming expert. You know, there are things that are going to slip past me that maybe it is real, maybe it isn't real. You know, I'm not the guru, the ultimate go-to guy on whether all of 100% of my cards are authentic. But if I were going to sell them and I was going to sell the big stuff, you know, the Tiffany, well, it is what it is. Don't think you really cared. I don't have to prove that. But if I were going to sell my Barry Sanders PMG, people want to know it's authentic. And now I got to go through the process of proving that it's authentic for maximum value. And then I got to send it through the mail. And am I going to insure it? And is it going to get lost in the mail? And do I need to go? Like, there's so many things that I'm not prepared as a collector to deal with all of that, because I just was in it for the cards, you know. And now I've got all these other things popping in my head. Like, what do I need to do to make sure my cards maintain value and are authentic? And it's like, dude, I just wanted to collect the player, you know?
Yeah.
Well, no, you're absolutely right, and that is a bummer. But you're right, Alan, too. Right, the value does matter. I have one graded card, and that's the Fleury PMG Green out of 10. Right, it's the highest graded copy, and there's only 10, and I haven't cracked it because if I do, I lose over half the value of that card. I guess my last point is this, right? If I'm going to buy an A-Rod, right, I've got $200 to spend or $500 to spend. Well, I could buy this PSA 10 insert, Flair Showcase Legacy, let's say, right? Or, right, I can get 3 legacies that are all raw for the exact same price. Which one would you rather have, right? And so you get into that, and that's where I get frustrated, right? Like when you're looking for 90s now, over half of the stuff is graded just because somebody was trying to get more value out of it, man. So, I mean, it even decreases the availability of cards even more than when we first started collecting or doing this podcast in 2019, right? Because now they've created rarity within rarity now, which now makes me pay more. So it just becomes so incredibly frustrating because I don't want to keep my cards that way ever until I'm 50 or 60 years old, if it even matters at that point. But that's my last point I wanted to make. It gets very frustrating in that regard.
I just want to say really quick to Rage, I've converted to Pro Mold with a penny sleeve inside. The penny sleeves go inside the Pro Mold, so you essentially don't have to worry about the one touches anymore. It's just Pro Mold and penny sleeve. But I hear what you're saying, Matt, and you know, using your money wisely is very important in this hobby, and spending all of your hard-earned cash on a PSA 10 when you could buy 3 different cards, it's definitely like a David and Goliath situation.
I can get that for $5 right there.
Right.
It cost me $100 to get this. So
yeah. So I mean, that's the thing. Like, yeah, now you have a 10 of that hard to grade copy. That's great, but I just want the card. You know, that's all I care about. And this too. I just want the card. I don't need it to be perfect. I don't care. But then I guess if you're like, well, what if you sell it in 30 years, right? That's why everybody is probably grading, because the what if, right, Greg, with your Barry Sanders, what if I sell it?
Well, this
you gotta grade
it. This
I
card,
guess.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I guess where my thought is, I don't want to leave a burden on my family to say he's got $250,000 worth of cards, and I don't know how to deal with that. Well, if they're in PSA cases and PSA's hot still, it's going to be a lot easier to get value for my family. But it's like, that's not, it's like, I'm a collector. I'm not I care about the money. I do care about the money, but I'm a collector. So it's just one of those unfortunate things of like, whatever it happens to the cards. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to spend the money to grade them, but I don't want to force that feeling on my family to have to deal with that when I'm gone. So I don't know, man. There's no right or wrong answer to any of this. It's frustrating.
It would all be solved if Matt were able to get what he wanted done, which is no grades for any card after 1989. That would
1989 back, perfect.
Because there would be less incentive. Because here, look, this is a 10, but I don't know if it was trimmed. I don't know if they used Kurt's card care on this, right? So, like, when you have a card that was graded, this cert is like almost 8 million, so it's graded in the last 2 or 3 years. You don't know what it means. Like, I think I agree with one of Ohio Lawyer's comments earlier on when he said, if you collect lower grade cards, actually, you're probably safer, than if you were to collect high grade cards. So what does it even mean? Because I have a friend who's a heavy grader. He's a Jeter collector, and he says he's submitted the same card in multiple times, and the grade has fluctuated 3 grades, like from a 7 to a 10, depending on which time he sent it. And we all know this to be true sort of instinctively, but to hear it from somebody who's actually done it and seen it, I mean, it's crazy. But the last thing I'll say about this particular card is this card is a mess. Like, usually there's like watermark up there and it's peeling. I mean, this card is an absolute disaster. So to even have a card that looks like a 10 to your naked eye, I think is a rare thing. And to have it sanctioned by PSA, the Grand Poobah is a PSA, maybe even a little bit better. But I don't know. It makes things so complicated. I wish we could wash our hands of it all.
Well, I'll say this. For those of you who are not familiar with tag, there were a few experiments and I watched them. Somebody sent in a non-serial number card and got a grade, cracked it, sent it back. They were able to determine that it was the same exact card based on the analyzation of the card through tag and gave it the same exact grade with the same exact serial number. Now, that to me is consistency. And that is very important in what we're doing here, because then I have something to rely on and I have something that I can believe in. Because if you were able, now I don't know if this is Matt sent a card and Matt sent it back. And so they were like, well, what are the odds that Matt sent this card and sent it again? So we're going to give it the same. But again, with the computer models and just analyzing the card, they ended up giving it the same number, the same serial number. And that to me is a good feeling. I like that feeling.
Right. Well, I just saw somebody get like an SGC 8.5 and they sent it in and got a 10 from PSA. And that's just insane to me. How can that even happen? Or vice versa. They send an SGC 10 and get an 8 from PSA. Like, that is just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Because it's not consistent. If there was one grading company and it was always consistent, like tag is 100% consistent, it seems like so far, then my opinion would probably change even more, because then it's just one company, right? But we've got freaking 10 companies out there, and it's all subjective, and it just takes so much of the allure away from collecting for me. I like it exactly how it came out of the pack 20 years ago, 5 years ago, yesterday. That's how I want it, and I'm going to stick to that if I can. Yeah.
I don't like leaving my cards to a guy who could be hung over with a fight with his wife, and then it's a 6, and tomorrow he, won a scratch off ticket for $50 and now it's a 7 or an 8. And it's like, I don't like that thought. I'd rather have something consistent and uniform.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there's tons of opinions. I mean, but it's super cool. I mean, I think that's why this debate was so fun, Alan, because you are the grading guy of the three of us, right? You love the consistency. You've had a lot of experiences, good and bad, with them, right? So you can still say that you love it despite some of the upcharges and all this other stuff. Greg has his PSA 10, like some of his base cards and whatnot, and I have very little. It gives people things to think about, and that's what this podcast is all about, right? Nobody in here is saying that you should or shouldn't grade or buy graded or whatever. We're giving you the option to figure it out for yourself. What do you want to do, right? What works best for you? And there's a lot of options. I think there's frustrations, and there's also some very big positives, especially when you're looking at preserving the value of these big investments, right? We've all paid great amounts for our cards, and we want that to be safe and protected for our future generations. So I totally get it. You know, there's frustrations, but I also think it's awesome at the same time in certain ways. So it'll be really curious to think. Do you guys, last question, then we'll wrap it up. Do you think PSA will remain the top grading company 5 years from now?
I don't know about the time horizon, but I can almost guarantee you that they won't remain the top company forever, because we've even in my short collecting lifetime, I remember when BGS 9.5s were preferred in some important circles like the Strasbourg, modern cards, autographed cards, hockey cards, magic cards, much bigger than sports cards. Preferred BGS or still preferred BGS to this day. I don't think anything remains the same forever. I'm rooting for TAG to be what they claim they are. I'm rooting for TAG to be what Greg has described, because this is what grading was meant to be from the beginning. And it would be a completely different debate if the grade was the same every single time, no matter how many times you submitted it, and they were able to identify your base card out of a million just based on the scratch pattern of it. That would change the game for me.
I don't think PSA is going to be in any trouble in 5 years, like within 5 years. But I think after 5 years, 8, maybe 7, 10, I think you're going to start seeing probably something else that's really gaining traction. I think 5 years they're probably safe, but after 5, then we're talking.
I like Alan. I'm really curious to see where TAG goes, because I mean, I love the way those slabs look. I mean, I know it screws up the consistency of the one-touch cases that we're holding all our cards in, but they look great, man. They really do. When you go to the National and you look at the little booth and got some examples, you're like, dang, the shine is perfect in here. So yeah, I'm tempted, you know, I'm definitely tempted. But first off, I want to say a lot of fun chatting about these two subjects with you guys. I think we covered a lot of ground, and it was a fun way to kind of lead into our big 100th episode. And obviously everybody in the comments. I don't know about you guys, but I really loved the chatter tonight. It was great to see nobody was like, you know, like, no, you're wrong. It was just some real valid points all the way through. That was really, really fun for me. I don't know about you guys, but that was one of the better parts too, is seeing all the discussion.
Yeah. I love seeing comments. I love having extra discussion that we don't know that exists. And so it's really cool to see comments come in that add to the discussion, because a lot of times, you know, we can all think about, you and I, we can have discussions, but sometimes there are extra elements that are added that we just don't think about. And that's fun. It's fun.
Right. For sure. Well, yeah, we're gonna say goodbye then. This was a bit of a longer episode. Thanks for sticking with us. I don't know if they're saying agreed to showing cards or good show, but there will be lots of cards being shown on our 100th episode. So we can guarantee that for sure. Any final thoughts, Alan, before we sign off for tonight?
No, I mean, I echo what you guys said for sure. Loved the active comments. Love reading it. We do the show largely for ourselves, so really appreciate you guys jumping in. The more involved you are, the more we can go off on the sort of tangents that we like to go off on. And these are the types of topics that collectors like us, we sit in a room and just think about sometimes for hours, right? So
yeah, for sure. How about yourself, Greg?
No, I think we had a great episode. I'll show a card off.
There we go.
This is a 5x7. Just so we showed something off, or I guess Alan showed a bunch of cards. I didn't show anything, so I showed one card. I'm looking forward to 100. You guys, please tune in for 100. It's going to be very special. It's going to be a spectacular. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Well, on that note, we're gonna zoom out of here and catch you on the next one, which will be a really exciting one. Can't wait for that. I've got some fun things planned, and once we get those solidified, we'll get an announcement out earlier than we normally do, because we'd love to have a pretty exciting audience with us to celebrate and throw some comments and stuff at us. So until then, everybody have a great rest of your week. Greg, Alan, thanks for the time, and everyone, thanks for joining us. We'll see you very soon.
See you.